projector here. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing slides, but some slides to kind of bring everyone up to speed, and then just opening up to be an informal discussion. We're really interested to get people's honest feedback and views on how we can best. I'm scared. How we can best help drive COLLADA forward. So there's a few people here that have been in the working group, and there's many people that have not, which is great. Let's see you here. Perhaps, although we've had a chance to chat, many of us, perhaps we can just go around and introduce ourselves so we know who's here. So let me start. I'm Neil Trevett. I work for NVIDIA. It's my day job, but I'm also president of the Khronos group, and I've been facilitating the COLLADA working group whilst we figure out the future direction. So,
Thank you. Uli Klumps with Microsoftware. I'm running the graphic software development for the company, and I'm also a member of the COLLADA working group.
Fabrice Robinet. I worked at Motorola Mobility, but before I worked at Apple, so it was more related to COLLADA at this time.
Damon Hernandez. I work with a building company. It uses interactive 3D and digital fabrication to build houses.
It's May. I work with Damon as well.
I'm Daniel Tavares. I work for COLLADA. I'm a software engineer over there, and I'm interested in contributing with vendors after supporting COLLADA.
thank you for coming. You've had the longest commute.
I'm Khronos. I come from Spain, and I'm in a company which has a game studio. The company is also in R&D, and we work with simulators for military customers, and we work with space agency, obviously for making games, which is our main field of expertise.
Steve Robinall, currently an independent game developer, using COLLADA as my import format for pretty much all my assets now. So it's a new engine, but COLLADA's the backbone of how we interface with the rest of the world.
I'm Tim Child. I run a small startup. We're working on building content management systems for 3D content using GPU-accelerated databases.
I'm back in the expensive seats.
Doug May, I'm a collaboration architect. I'm also TA in the game design class at College of Marin, and I'm looking for a new home.
Cool. Well, welcome everyone. So let me start the conversation by going through a handful of slides here. The COLLADA working group has been discussing a few things and how to increase COLLADA momentum. And this is the first of, we hope to be a series of meetups to engage between the Khronos COLLADA working group and the broader community. We want to work, I should spell COLLADA correctly, but we want to work much more closely between the consortium and the community. And as I mentioned, we're really looking for input and feedback at this session. So what I'm going to do is go through what we think is the state of the union, but if you don't agree, please feel free to say so, and the opportunities and the issues that COLLADA has, and some suggested actions on collaboration. But again, they're just starting points, and we're really looking for genuine feedback and ideas. And there's some new people. Khronos, let me give the 20-second overview of what Khronos is, in case you haven't come across it before. It's an open standards organization. It's open in two ways. We're open to any company or academic institution to join, and the standards that we produce are open and royalty free. They're free for anyone to use, and there's no fee to use them. And we tend to focus primarily on, what's my next slide? Yes, this is the kind of the set of APIs that we currently have. It's the interface between software and silicon, normally acceleration APIs, OpenGLES, OpenCL, and the newer ones for vision and sensor processing. COLLADA is the one standard that we have that actually isn't an acceleration API. It is the odd man out in that respect, in that it's, as we all know, a 3D digital asset interchange format. But I think the Collada does play a vital role, particularly in the 3D authoring ecosystem, feeding down into the acceleration APIs like OpenGL, OpenGLES, and increasingly WebGL for content on the web is a vital piece of making the whole 3D industry move forward smoothly. I thought there was a build on it, we'll get through rid of that. So, in the working group, I think we're all driven by the belief that the industry needs Collada. I think you can look at many instances in the industry where there's an area of endeavor. You typically get a proprietary leading standard that a company is investing in and pushing forward, which is counterbalanced by an open standard, which is where the rest of the industry gets to have a voice and gets to innovate and have a say as to how things evolve. And I've picked out some obvious examples: OpenGL and DirectX, HTML5 and Flash, the 3D parts of that, WebGL and Stage 3D, OpenCL and CUDA, and last but not least, Collada and FBX. And you can look at those examples, and the ecosystem as a whole tends to work best, we think, when both the proprietary leader and the open standard are healthy and evolving and are actually reach a healthy competitive dynamic where they're both pushing each other forward. One is not necessarily better in all respects than the other, but they're both being driven by their own user communities. Having competition is very Darwinian, and it really improves the situation for everyone. So to have an industry without an open standard 3D asset format seems like a bad thing. And we are getting quite a lot of Collada momentum. A lot of large companies are using it. Apple is now using Collada, and Fabrice can tell us more, but it's now pretty built into Mac OS Lion and the new iBooks software stack. Google is using it in Earth and SketchUp. Adobe is using it as an import format into the Creative Suite. We have Uli, who's working with the automation ML and the CAD industry, have been driving lots of the requirements for Collada 1.5. We're in the process of making Collada an ISO standard for the CAD industry. And from within Khronos itself, we've recently made quite an extensive conformance suite, freely and publicly available. So anyone can take the suite and use it and test, import and export. So, things, yes, go ahead.
So with Google, have they passed, well, one, have they passed the conformance, and two, do you have in the slides, or are you at liberty to say who has passed the conformance so far?
I don't believe they do fully pass. Did you know?
They've been working on it. I believe they got pretty far. I don't know whether it's finished yet and released, but I know that there was a lot of effort on their end to pass. So I think that's ongoing work in progress.
Okay, because I know it's not in the current one.
Right.
And that is an issue. Just real quick, one of the things that I'm here interested in is I find a lot of people, not so much from the game industry because I don't deal with that, but in other industries and from those that I do, that it's a great tool that exports it, but the Collada that you get out of SketchUp isn't necessarily Collada that you want to get.
Yes.
So I was just curious as to if, for what it's worth, whatever efforts anyone is interested in approaching that team down there, who we happen to know as well.
Yes.
I'd be more than happy to say, hey, let's collaborate and see what we can do to help expedite them doing this, because that solves, I know, a lot of problems for
Yes.
people.
Yes. And I think that's what will come on in a second, is that round trip reliability of
Exactly.
import and export that is the key issue, I think, that we are gathered here today to discuss. That's the thing that's causing the issues. And I think it's, we want to reach out to the community and have a much broader community engagement. But of course, that doesn't mean we need to keep working with these larger companies too. It's consulting the community, we need to be in the same direction. So, what did you say?
I know with OpenCL, Khronos published a list of people who've passed the conformance tests. Is that the same with COLLADA, or is there intention to do that? I don't want to get into name and shame, but it's
yeah, that is the intent. But there's not been a lot of people that have actually managed to finish the conformance tests so far. And I think it's, again, you might have more details on this, but COLLADA is very complex. The conformance suite is a little bit difficult to use, and so therefore we haven't had a lot of people, even though we've made the conformance tests free, we haven't had a lot of people go through the complete process. And that's one of the things we want to talk about today, is actually simplifying the process to make it easier, because we want to get to the state where we do measure conformance in a meaningful way, because something that gets measured gets improved, and we haven't really broke through that wall yet of encouraging people in a loving way to be conformant.
Okay.
So, would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, there's 3 levels of conformance, 3 different badges that you can earn. I think for most workflows, the base level badge would be enough. So I guess really the effort should be to encourage every party to at least pass that. I think right now we're in the mode of building awareness that this is a crucial part of making the format successful, right? I mean, there's more than enough implementations out there. I think the issues really revolve around the quality of the implementations, and we're just right now getting the word out that this tool essentially is what will hopefully get all those implementations on the right level. And I think passing the base level is actually not that hard, and once everyone gets to that point, it'll be good. And there's details being worked out with how the results are getting published, but it is in motion, so that once they roll in, we'll certainly publish them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Will you also talk about the implications of being an ISO standard?
We can do. I didn't have any more slides on it, but that initiative has come. It's an SC4, subcommittee 4 in ISO, which is defining a standard for CAD data interchange, and I would say 3/4 of the way through that process. We've actually been selected out of a number of competing standards to be advanced to an official standard.
Does that also mean that it will then be owned by ANSI? Will ANSI have a role?
No, well, yes, ANSI will have a role, obviously it's part of the ISO, but the way that we're structuring it, it's actually the way that Vernal did it, which was actually a good way. It's where you don't hand control over to ANSI-ISO, because that can slow things down quite a lot. But they basically refer to you, in this case Khronos, as an official ISO standard. So they would take a particular version, like 1.5, and say, okay, that version is an official ISO standard, so we're going to make sure it's archived and available for all time. But the COLLADA working group is still free to innovate and keep developing at its own rate, and then ISO would come in and take another snapshot at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I mean, just to nitpick on ISO is the fact that they charge for standards, and it sets up more barriers. Right.
Yes.
But it's a good stamp to have.
It's just additive.
Okay.
So because ISO have a version, say we finish at 1.5, we can still make 1.5 freely available on the Khronos website. Okay. It's just, and for in the engineering community, there is some value that standard isn't just going to disappear overnight.
Oh, no. ISO standards are good, but for the small players, there are barriers.
Right. But as I say, it's additive, so you're not taking anything away from our process.
It's good.
I must add that for some projects in Europe specifically, because that's what I can talk about, we are requested to use ISO standard data formats, etc., etc. So for us, if we are to participate in such projects, we can bring the COLLADA format as long as it is an ISO standard. We have not yet been able to do so, and that would bring value into the product because of our production pipeline.
Right.
Because
Yeah, please don't. I'm not disputing the value of having an ISO standard. I think that's wonderful. It seems like you've got the ISO standard, seal of approval, plus you don't have some of the nits that ISO bring to the development community.
That's right.
So if you can do both, great. It's a win-win. I see it as a win-win. So.
Yeah, I think it is a win-win.
Right.
They call it the fast track process, and it was pioneered. That was actually a good thing that the Rome Consortium did back in the day. They actually pioneered. They were the first consortium to pipe clean that process with ISO. So.
But I was not aware if you know about this advantage for us. Just in case.
Good. I'm glad you came. Okay, so there are lots of good things going on, but we have, as you say, we have these import-export problems, and this collection of problems has bundled up together to the extent where it's actually become a kind of a critical issue for COLLADA, because the import-export capability doesn't give secure round-tripping for the key tools that many people are using, and the feedback we've had so far, and again, we're open to more, but the feedback we've had so far is Maxmeyer and Blender, in particular, are being used by most of the community out there, and COLLADA is not providing the enough robustness in import-export to actually be useful. And that is a critical problem, because we are in competition with our FBX, and FBX is, at the moment, providing a more reliable path. So people are doing the understandable thing and using FBX, where even in many cases where they really want to use COLLADA, they're being forced into using a standard from a particular company. So we have Open COLLADA, and quick show of hands, how many people have heard of Open COLLADA? Most people, okay, not everyone. So Open COLLADA is an open source project that has the potential to provide an open source, community-driven import-export capability that can be freely used to plug into any and all packages that would want to use it. There's a lot of work has gone into Open COLLADA, and I think really, again, it's an accurate. Lots of people recognise that it's actually very close to being a reliable import-exporter. I mean, have you used it?
Yes. Excuse me. It certainly represents probably one of the best implementations that's out there. There's just certain things that I guess make people doubt in it, and then it needs some love, and it needs some hands from the community to essentially really make it shine. I think it's the best spaces out there for collaborative effort. The code's available, the license is relatively liberal, and it doesn't have so many issues that it couldn't be brought to the level that it needs to be, and then it can be a very reliable excuse me, building block of most pipelines that exist out there today.
But again, there's a but. The open source project momentum has stalled.
That's the problem
currently, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation. Why is it stalled, and what can we do to reinvigorate it again? Because it's not, as I say, it's this close to actually being a solution to this import-export problem. It's not like it's a horrible thing that needs 20 man years of work. We think it's in order of months to bring it up to fix all the known issues, and then it would be a great platform taking things further forward. Yes.
Do you want to take questions on that now?
No, yeah, sure, yeah.
So whereabouts is it hosted?
That's a great question.
Google Code.
Google Code.
Oh, Google Code, that's right.
Google Code, okay. I don't know whether putting it on GitHub would give any advantage. GitHub seemed to be more momentum from an open source social coding point of view.
Right. I mean, if that would definitively bring in more hands, then that's probably something that could be considered a move. But
I can tell you that we as a company and the corporate group to which we belong to have fundamental problems with Google as is and with Google Code specifically. And none of our companies will do anything Google Code related. Apart from that, I have been unable to justify, call it my fault, but sometimes meetings go difficult, to justify releasing to the public efforts put by ourselves and funded by ourselves on having a more stable production pipeline, including the COLLADA format. One thing we do pride on is bringing talent no matter the tools they use. So if they're good at Max, they're good at Lightweight, they're good at whatever, we don't really care. But we need their content in the right place, in the right format. And for this, we're using COLLADA. Granted, it was not 100% reliable as is, so we put additional effort. And this additional effort was translated into in-house tools, which I have tried opening to the public, submitting, etc. First step, first problem, Google Code. The second one, releasing to the public, specifically competitors, in-house developed tools and code, is something I am yet to make them, understand.
It needs evangelization. Right?
Yes.
Right.
so, is it technical issues with Google Code or legal issues or strategic issues?
Mostly legal issues.
Interesting. I don't think we're wedded to Google Code.
Not necessarily. I mean, I always had the perception it was a fine place to have that stuff, but if it's an issue and if there's a better place and there's people that say, oh, I would contribute if it only were accessible via whatever, I think we should look into that.
In our case, there are two main issues. One is Google and the other one is I still have to struggle to make them understand this is the right move. And not if it's good for more people in the long run, it will return to us multiplied.
Right.
That's right. That's when the open source magic happens, right? When everyone is gaining more than they contribute.
And still in struggling that.
Right. Well, if we can help, let us know. But that's a good. Do people then prefer GitHub or SourceForge, or does anyone have any?
I think GitHub has a lot of momentum for social coding, but I look at other other projects, and I should go back and take a look at COLLADA, but say the Postgres community, we have our own server farms for testing and things like that. So we've made it easy for people to work in the environment, and so we've knocked down a whole bunch of barriers. So if you need to test it on various files and things like that, you don't have to use your own machines, you can use community machines, and so there are lots of community resources.
Interesting.
And we put bounties on some features, so people can sponsor people to write features as well. So there are a number of ways to energize and get the community, but it all depends on finding leadership in the community.
Yes.
And I think ultimately the source of money or people being able to generate revenue streams off of it.
Yes. Right.
Right. And so it's kind of chicken and the egg.
Yes. Yes. So I suspect that we'll have a lot of discussion on that. I think that's going to be kind of the key.
Yeah. Was talking about open source magic just a second ago. I use Blender away from Khronos, and for many folks, FBX is a good solution, but for open source, it just doesn't work at all because GPL does not allow you to link to FBX libraries. So it's really, really important for Blender. All we have to fall back on then is wait for an object, which is like 20 years old. It's just dreadful. So yeah, we need it.
So What are the current, because I'm going through the Open Collada org site now, and I don't really see it saying, you know, like here's the work that's going on. I mean, you have the news and you have, okay, we're addressing the issue with, you know, Max Maya, Blender, and there's some other updates. But are there any working groups that, because I mean, I know the I think it's NetAllied, right? I mean, those guys did a lot of work on it. And
They spearheaded it.
yeah, exactly, right. But I mean, like, what other groups are there that if one says, hey, I know I'm not the only person that has an issue with, like, say, for example, SketchUp or something,
Right.
or finding some way of solving that.
Right.
How do I rally up the troops to say who else has this problem, and then we come and say,
That's why we're here.
excellent, okay, well,
Because that's missing.
I will follow up with you then with a list of companies that I've
Yes.
had a chance to circle the wagons with. And,
You know, and I think that would be great if we can brainstorm. If we all agree that this is a worthwhile thing to do, brainstorm how we can actually start that community engagement process. I think that's kind of the essence of what we want to achieve here.
a meeting after the Austin thing.
Yes. Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Open Collada Hackathon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or, I mean, if people could sponsor this,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I think it's going to take some green.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I know companies that want, they straight up are going to pay to develop this, but they say, hey, look, if we can solve this problem for the greater good, we'd rather do that, right?
Do that.
So, I mean, it's, yeah.
I think it's just we just need to get the word out.
Next step, sure.
What?
So, go ahead. You can
I was
break
going to say, I'm kind of odd in the sense that I'm doing actually a Java-based implementation. So while you can do native code integration, and that would be an option for using it in Collada, it's relatively easy with modeling tools and Eclipse to bring in the Collada schema and get something that works with the files directly and bring it straight into the Java environment.
Interesting.
So it's been fairly easy for me to read Collada so far, and eventually
Cool.
as well.
So have you used Open Collada?
No,
No?
no, because I would have to do the extra step of doing the native code integration.
Okay. Interesting.
Also, maybe the momentum style a bit because it seems to have started because the effort is a bit spread across different domes, like the Sony dome and the F Collada. So, if there is a blessing from Khronos saying that there is a kind of, say, official, even it's not really official API for reading Collada, which is Open Collada, then some people might switch.
Yes.
We could get some momentum on Open Collada.
Yes.
For instance, at Apple, they use the Solidum. First, they use the F Collada. So, but if there, it would be nice to have a good message for people who want to invest in effort and know which DOM to
Yes.
choose in the jungle, because not everyone is aware of the history and all that.
Yes. That's a good point. I agree. Okay. Any other